So a subscriber of mine was kind or mad enough to give me his BMW E30 M3 to work on so I could make videos for you guys. The first thing he said to me when I met him, whilst handing me the keys, was don't crash it, don't blow the engine up, and don't let it get stolen. I truly felt like a child on Christmas Day. Big thanks to Antonio for trusting me with this beautiful car. It's been great to work on and even better to drive. The only downside to all of this is that I now know I have to get one for myself. So this is a US spec BMW E30 M3 from 1988. It was imported to Spain from Kentucky in 2016. Although quite pricey today, Antonio paid his uncle just $2,500 for what was at the time a non-runner that had been sat for 10 years. After it arrived in Spain, it went straight to a BMW specialist who got it running and roadworthy so it could pass the ITV, or MOT as we call it in the UK. During its time in the States, it suffered a crash, which meant the whole car was resprayed. The paint is now showing signs of age and will need addressing in this series. The exhaust has a few holes in it, and the underside is where most of the work is needed. As this car has been in a hot climate its whole life, there isn't much rust to deal with, only a few superficial spots here and there. Broken bits of plastic, tired looking license plate lights, and a few missing pieces are great examples of the small things that, if dealt with, will really finish off the car nicely alongside the new paint job. These US license plate holes will need to be deleted before the respray as well. Most of the parts on this car are original and are working fine. The engine does leak oil and will get pulled out and rebuilt at Refitting. It still sounds pretty sweet though. Before we get straight into fixing a few issues, I have a few important words from today's sponsor, Get Roman. Quite worryingly, erectile dysfunction is more common than you might think. A whopping 52% of men over the age of 40 experience ED at some point, and even worse, roughly 75% of those guys don't seek treatment. That's why Roman has made it easy to chat with a doctor online. With Roman, you can get medical care for ED from the comfort and privacy of your own home, so you can handle everything online in a convenient, discreet manner. Getting started is simple. Just go to getroman.com/restore and complete an online visit. If your doctor decides that the treatment would be appropriate, they can prescribe genuine medicine that can be delivered in discreet packaging right to your door with free 2-day shipping. So come on lads, go talk to the doctor. ED can be a tough one to tackle, but it's really important to get checked out, and with Roman it's very easy to connect with a doctor. Thanks to Get Roman for supporting the channel. Let's get back to the M3. So like I said, we wanted to start by fixing a few niggling issues that would be easier to deal with everything still together and plugged in. The first of which involved the window wipers. As you can see, the window wipers are turning off as soon as the stick goes into the off position. When they are turned off halfway, they stop in the middle of the screen and don't return to their resting position. Every time you want to get them to go to their resting position, you have to play a little game to get them there. Antonio told me that he'd done some research and thought he knew what the issue was. Something to do with the motor contacts not contacting correctly due to wear over time. He started by removing all of the necessary parts to get to the motor. Once we had our hands on it, we drilled through the rivets to see what it was like inside. As soon as we were inside, we knew everything was fine. The grease looked brand new and everything functioned as it should. It was at this point I asked Tony if he had checked the relay. His answer was no. I immediately went and got one from the Coupe that I knew was working. We fitted it to the car and the problem was solved straight away. We probably should have checked that first, but hey ho, problem solved. Moving swiftly on to the next issue, which was to do with the central locking system. The doors would only lock when the key was turned in the boot or passenger door. This led Antonio to believe that the lock on the driver's side door was either wrong or broken in some way. The first thing to do was to remove the parts attached to the door card, so that the door card itself would come off, giving us access to the lock. Once inside, the lock was wiggled out of its position and onto the bench for a rebuild. With a new lock set from BMW, the new tumblers were fitted into a new cylinder in the correct position along with the rest of the new parts and grease from the kit. Once it was fitted, it became clear that it wasn't the problem. Although much nicer to turn, the lock still wouldn't activate the passenger door or boot. We had a good look at what was going on and decided to compare it against the other side to see if we can see any differences. Once we had the other one in hand, we could see one key piece missing from the driver's side. This little piece of metal. When the key turns, a piece on the lock contacts this piece of metal, which then forces it into a solenoid switch, which then activates the central locking motors for all of the doors. Because the boot and passenger door locks had this piece attached, when the key is turned in either of those locks, the driver door would still lock even without it being present. The signal is still sent to the driver's door to activate the central locking motor. We could either wait for a new one to arrive or make one of our own. We decided to make one of our own. After a few test fits and a bit of tweaking, we got it to fit and just needed to bend it into the correct shape. Everything was then put back together and refitted to the car for another test. To our joy, everything worked as it should. With those two small issues dealt with, we got the car up to temperature and on jack stands so we could drain the fluids. The oil sump plug was undone and the old oil removed. It looks pretty thin to me, but it might just be less thick than the stuff I'm used to in the UK. Hotter the climate, thinner the oil, right? Next was the coolant. As it was such a nice day, Antonio decided to get started on the disassembly outside. The bonnet's heat shield and attachments were removed first. Next were the grille and lights. The wiring loom was labelled as things were taken off, and the things were stored in clear bags with masking tape labels. With everything off the bonnet, we then unbolted it and put it somewhere safe. We then lowered the car and pushed it into the workshop, ready to be further dismantled. And there we go, another project for Restore It. I already have a huge amount of this restoration filmed and ready to be edited. I just need to edit it together and get it out. I hope you enjoyed this unexpected episode because there's a lot more of it to come. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.